So good morning everyone. So we are met after a long time. So disorders, today we are going to see disorders associated with protein metabolism. Okay. So protein metabolism is completed. Almost disorders are also completed, the clinical aspects of protein metabolism. So today we are going to see the complete overview, the conclusion of the disorders associated with protein metabolism. So proteins, they are made up of amino acids, which contains amino group and carboxyl group, and it will be having a side chain. And we know the amino acids are joined by peptide bond. And we had seen all this classification of the amino acids, classification of the proteins, and how the peptide bond is formed. All this we had seen in the previous classes. So coming to protein digestion, we know protein is to some extent denatured in the stomach and partially hydrolyzed in the stomach, and it is broken down into small peptides and amino acids in small intestine by digestive enzymes and the which are present in the pancreatic juice. And finally, in the intestinal lining, the amino acids which are formed from the proteins, breakdown of the proteins, are absorbed through the intestinal lining. Okay. So, what are the clinical aspects of protein digestion? So, here you can see the protein losing enteropathy, the excessive loss of proteins through intestinal, gastrointestinal tract. This is due to the defect in the intestinal lining, due to which the proteins can't be absorbed properly and they are excreted and there will be loss of proteins. And the next is partial gastrectomy or pancreatitis. It will directly affect the digestion and absorption of the proteins. And Hartnupp's disease, due to defect in the amino acid transport system, leads to Hartnupp's disease. Okay, these are the clinical aspects of the disorders of the protein digestion and absorption. And the next, the important part related to the proteins, the amino acids, is transamination and deamination. So you know what is transamination and what is deamination. Transamination is transfer of amino group and deamination is removal of the amino group. Transamination is transfer of amino group from one amino acid to another amino acid. And deamination is removal of amino group from amino acid as ammonia, in the form of ammonia. This is deamination. Okay? And the enzyme required for transamination and deamination are transaminases and deaminases. And the coenzyme required for transamination is pyridoxal phosphate. So coming to the clinical importance, the main importance of the transamination and deamination is energy generation from excess amino acids and synthesis of non-essential amino acids. So these are the important functions of the transamination and deamination. If suppose there is defect in the transamination and deamination due to defect in the enzymes or due to some other cause, the energy generation and the synthesis of non-essential amino acids will be affected. So this is the clinical importance related to the defect in the transamination and deamination. Okay, we know transamination and deamination are very important aspects of the protein metabolism. So coming to the metabolism of ammonia, we know ammonia is continuously formed in all the cells by the process of deamination. By the removal of the amino group, ammonia will be formed in almost all the cells of the body. and this ammonia, which is very toxic substance, is converted to less toxic urea, and this urea will be excreted through kidneys in the urine. Okay, that is a normal process. So ammonia is highly toxic, which is the end product of protein metabolism inside the cell, and this ammonia is transported to the liver, and in the liver the ammonia is converted to less toxic urea. This urea is excreted through kidneys in the urine. It is eliminated in the urine. So here you can see there is constant production of ammonia in all the cells of the body in different protein metabolisms by the removal of amine group by deamination. And after the formation of ammonia, it is immediately transported and converted to less toxic urea. So we know the ammonia is formed in all the tissues and muscle cells, and from the tissues it is transported to liver by glutamine. It is attached to glutamate, and glutamine is formed and it is transported to liver. Whereas in muscle, it is transported along with alanine, okay? And it reaches the liver. So all the ammonia which is formed in tissues and muscle finally reaches the liver. So inside the liver, it is converted to less toxic urea by urea cycle. So you all know the urea cycle is the urea cycle which converts highly toxic ammonia to the less toxic urea. So the first step is carbon dioxide combines with ammonia to form carboyl phosphate, which combines with ornithine to form citrulline, and which is converted to arginosuccinate, which is converted to arginine, and finally urea is formed and ornithine is released, which is again recycled to the formation of citrulline, which is again combined with the carboyl phosphate to form citrulline. So this is the urea cycle, you know, and these are all the enzymes which are related to the urea cycle. So coming to the disorders of urea cycle, we know the enzyme defect can occur in urea cycle. Any enzyme defect can occur in the urea cycle, which finally leads to the accumulation of ammonia, which leads to hyperammonemia. So any enzyme defect in urea cycle finally leads to accumulation of ammonia, leading to hyperammonemia. Okay. So the metabolic defect of enzymes of urea cycle leads to hyperammonia, causing different type of toxicities. So it is harmful to brain, leading to mental retardation, slurring of speech, blurring of vision, tremors, and finally leads to coma and death. So the enzyme defect, any enzyme defect in the urea finally leads to hyperammonemia, leading to all the ill effects. So that's why ammonia is highly toxic. That's why it is converted to less toxic urea and eliminated in the urine immediately. It is transported from the cells to the liver. In the liver, it is converted to urea, and from kidneys, it is excreted immediately. Because ammonia is highly toxic, it will be having the following effects if it is accumulated in the body. So that's why its removal is very important in the body. So this is the clinical importance of the normal process of removal of ammonia and accumulation of the ammonia. And these are different types of defects of urea cycle. The different enzymes, these are different enzymes, the defect of which leads to different types of disorders. The important, these all you have seen already, but the important thing that you have to remember is in these, the first two type of disorders, that is the enzyme defects of carboyl phosphate synthase 1 and ornithine transcarbamylase, the ammonia is directly accumulated. Ammonia is directly accumulated due to the defect in these two enzymes, the first two enzymes. The defect in the other three enzymes leads to accumulation of these products directly, and which in turn indirectly leads to accumulation of ammonia. Okay, so that is the important thing. So the enzyme defect in urea cycle, any enzyme defect in urea cycle, so ultimately leads to accumulation of ammonia. The first two enzymes directly lead to the accumulation of ammonia, and the other enzymes leads to accumulation of the other products directly, and indirectly leads to the accumulation of ammonia. And we know ammonia is very toxic, which leads to different ill effects in the body. So urea in some cases, in some diseases, urea is formed completely from ammonia. But when there is defect in the elimination of urea through kidneys, it leads to accumulation of urea. This is known as uremia. So different conditions are there, pre-renal, renal, post-renal. So in these conditions, urea will be accumulated in the blood, leading to uremia. So the pre-renal causes are major surgery, prolonged fever, diabetes, thyrotoxicosis. The renal causes are glomerulonephritis, polycystic kidney, and nephrosclerosis. And post-renal being tumors, stones, prostate hyperplasia. These are the conditions in which the urea formed from the ammonia can't be eliminated through the kidneys in urine. So due to which the urea is accumulated in the blood, leading to uremia. Okay, so these are the clinical aspects of elimination of the end products of the protein. So the conclusion of elimination of ammonia in urea is ammonia is formed in all the cells of the body as a end product of protein metabolism, amino acid, by removal of amine group from the amino acid. So as the ammonia is very toxic, highly toxic, it is transported to liver immediately and converted to urea. And this urea is less toxic and it is also eliminated through kidneys in the urine. So during the formation of the urea by urea cycle in liver, different enzymes are required. So during this conversion, if there is any defect in the enzymes, it leads to accumulation of the ammonia, leading to hyperammonemia. Okay. And if suppose urea can be completely formed from ammonia, and if there is any other defects like renal defects, it may lead to increased urea, which is known as uremia. So we had seen the defects related to digestion and absorption of the proteins and defects related to the elimination of end products of the protein metabolism. Now we are seeing the defects, the disorders related to the individual amino acid metabolism. So glycine, you know glycine, the amino acid. So the important aspects of the glycine is the glycine is required for the synthesis of glutathione. We know glutathione is having a number of functions. If there is any deficiency of glycine, it leads to the defective synthesis of glutathione, which affects many biological functions in the body. And one more important aspect of glycine is the important precursor for the synthesis of heme. So if there is any defect in the glycine, which leads to it affects the synthesis of heme. So heme, it is helpful in the synthesis of hemoglobin and transport of the oxygen. So all these things will be affected if there is deficiency of the glycine. And coming to the direct effect of the direct defects in the glycine metabolism, glycinuria due to defect in renal absorption, and primary hyperoxaluria due to defect in glycine transaminase. Okay, glycine is converted to oxalate. So this is with the help of glycine transaminase. So if there is any defect in the glycine transaminase, it leads to hyperoxaluria. And glycinuria can directly occur if there is any defect in the renal absorption. So these are the defect of glycine metabolism directly. Next is the disorders of phenylalanine thyroxine metabolism. This is very important because most of the disorders in protein metabolism are associated with phenylalanine and thyroxine metabolism. Anyway, we had seen all these things, but we are reviewing the things. So this is the metabolism of phenylalanine thyroxine. Phenylalanine is converted to tyrosine, tyrosine converted to hydroxyphenyl pyruvate, which is converted to homogen state, which is converted to malonyl ester state, and fumarate ester state is formed, and finally it is converted to fumarate. It is degraded to fumarate and ester state, and finally we will be getting the acetoacetyl CoA. Okay, so this is the degradation or metabolism of phenylalanine and tyrosine. So here all the enzymes are very important because the defect in any enzyme can lead to different disorders. Okay? Phenylalanine hydroxylase, tyrosine transaminase, phenyl pyruvate dioxygenase, homogeneous state oxidase, methyl ester isomerase, and fumarate ester hydroxylase. So the first most common disorder of phenylalanine metabolism is phenylketonuria. The first step, that is conversion of phenylalanine to tyrosine, requires phenylalanine hydroxylase. So if there is any defect in the enzyme phenylalanine hydroxylase, it leads to accumulation of phenylalanine. So when the phenylalanine is accumulated, it is diverted to alternate pathways, which leads to the formation of phenyl pyruvate, phenyl lactate, and phenyl acetate. So these products will be accumulating in different tissues, leading to different symptoms in the phenylketonuria. So the symptoms are mental retardation, failure to walk, mood retardation, seizures, and pains. So the phenylalanine is accumulated, it goes to alternate pathway, leading to the formation of phenyl lactate and phenyl acetate, which accumulates in different tissues, which leads to the following clinical features. So these are the patients with phenylketonuria. So this is also the picture of a patient with phenylketonuria. So the diagnosis is commonly done by the Guthrie test, which is a bacterial assay, and ferric chloride test, in which the phenyl pyruvate is detected in the urine. Mostly the PK is detected by screening itself. Okay. And next is the alkaptonuria, black urine disease. So coming to the metabolism, this is very important metabolism because most of the disorders are related to this metabolism. So in this disease, the alkaptonuria, black urine disease, the defect is in enzyme homogenetic oxidase, which converts homogenetic to malonyl ester state. So when there is defect in this enzyme, what happens is homogenetic will be accumulating in the body, which leads to different symptoms. Okay? So when homogeneity is accumulates in the body, it is oxidized to form benzoquinones, which polymerase to form alkaptones. These alkaptones will be accumulating in different tissues of the body, connective tissue, bones, and different organs of the body. And accumulation is known as, the organs is known as ochronosis. And these alkaptones, if it is accumulating in joints, it leads to arthritis. So this is the picture of accumulation of the alkaptones in different tissues. So coming to the diagnosis, change in color of the urine on standing because of formation of alkaptones, ferric chloride test, and silver nitrate test. This will diagnose the alkaptonuria. See here you can see the urine initially, and on standing for some time it is converted to black color. Okay, due to formation of alkaptones. Other disorders related to the tyrosine type 1 or tyrosinosis, tyrosine type 2 or Richter. And coming to the metabolism, tyrosine type 2, the enzyme defect is this tyrosine transaminase, and tyrosine type 1, the enzyme defect is fumarate ester hydroxylase. So these are the enzymes leading to the type 1 and type 2 tyrosinemia. So the symptoms are dermatitis, eye lesion, mental retardation, disturbed self-knowledge, and it is diagnosed by metabolites in urine. And treatment is low thyroxine and phenylalanine diet. So these are the defects related to the thyroxine phenylalanine. So what are the defects we have seen in thyroxine and phenylalanine metabolism? The first one is the phenylketonuria. The next one is alkaptonuria. And the next one is thyroxinemia type 1 and type 2. In phenylketonuria, the enzyme defect is phenylalanine hydroxylase. That is very important. We use the phenylalanine and the other products will be accumulated during different symptoms. In alkaptonuria, the enzyme defect is the homogenesis oxidase, due to which the homogenesis will be accumulated and it is converted to alkaptones and accumulated in different organs. And in thyroxine type 1 and type 2, the enzyme defects are the fumarate esteoestate hydroxylase and thyroxine transferase, which leads to different symptoms. And diagnosis by metabolites in the urine and treatment is by low thyroxine diet. Next, disorders of thyroxine metabolism. So we had seen the one way of metabolism or degradation of the thyroxine and phenylalanine, that is conversion into fumarate and esteoestate. That is one way of metabolism of phenylalanine thyroxine. So the other ways of the utilization of thyroxine is synthesis of melanin, synthesis of thyroid hormones, and synthesis of hormones. So in the synthesis of these three also are some metabolic disorders. So all of you mute your video, mute your audios. I'm getting some sounds, so mute the audios. So melanin, synthesis of melanin, synthesis of thyroid hormone, occurs from the thyroid. Coming to the synthesis of melanin. So this all we have already seen. Synthesis of melanin, which is the important enzyme is thyrosinase. Finally, we will get melanin red polymers and black polymers. Okay, this is the utilization of thyrosin in the other way. The important enzyme is tyrosinase. So if there is any defect in enzyme, or if there is any defect in the melanocyte, in which the melanin is inside, which leads to defective. So this leads to hyperpigmentation and hypopigmentation. So hyperpigmentation is hyperactivity of melanocytes moles on the body. This is nothing but hyperpigmentation. The localized absence or degeneration of melanocytes results in white patches. This is known as hypopigmentation. So hypopigmentation, the formation of the white patches, is the important disorder that we have to remember about the melanin. So the localized hypopigmentation is known as vitiligo or leukoderma, and diffuse hypopigmentation is known as albinism. So the symptoms of the localized hypopigmentation is progressive disorder. Loss of pigmentation begins around the mouth, nose, or eyes, which is known as vitiligo, and if it starts around the hands, it is known as leukoderma. And graying of hair is also an important symptom. So here you can see the localized hypopigmentation, which can be starting around the eyes or around the mouth, which is known as vitiligo. And the diagnosis is done by examining the skin, and treatment is by sunscreens, bleaching of normal skin with topical creams, and soil and ultraviolet therapy. Okay. And the defective melanin synthesis may be due to deficiency of enzyme tyrosine. We know the tyrosine is an important enzyme for synthesis of melanin from tyrosine. So this is the basic defect. If there is defect in the tyrosine, it directly leads to the defect in the melanin synthesis. Defect in the melanocytes. So melanocyte is the place where melanin is synthesized from the tyrosine. If suppose the number of melanocytes are less or there is absence of melanocytes, it leads to defective synthesis of melanin and hypopigmentation. And defective polymerization, decrease in the tyrosine also lead to the hypopigmentation. And albinism. The diffused hypopigmentation is known as albinism. It is nothing but inborn error with generalized lack of pigment melanin synthesis. It is a autosomal recessive disorder. The clinical symptoms of albinism are change in skin color in the affected area. The body becomes sensitive to light. Photophobia is seen. The person cannot see the light. Photophobia will be there and susceptible to the skin cancer. So these are all seen in the albinism patient. So this is the picture of patient with albinism. Okay, this is also a picture of albinism. So the diagnosis is done by skin examination and genetic testing to detect any defective gene and electroretinogram. The treatment is protective clothing and sunglasses. That is it. That is a conservative treatment. Okay. So these are the defects we had seen. So we had seen the defects of metabolism of tyrosine phenylalanine. And in tyrosine, there is three ways of utilization of tyrosine. One is the melanin formation, thyroid hormones formation, and catecholamine formation. So we had seen the defect related to melanin formation. So what are the defects? Hyper and hypopigmentation. Hyperpigmentation leads to moles and hypopigmentation leads to vitiligo and albinism. Okay, and vitiligo can occur is a localized hypopigmentation. Albinism is a diffused hypopigmentation. So that we had already seen. Now we are seeing the second aspect, synthesis of thyroid hormones from tyrosine. So this we had already seen the metabolism, how the T3 and T4 are formed from the tyrosine in the thyroid gland. Okay, MIT and DIT are formed and they form T3 and T4 by coupling. This all we had already seen in the metabolism. So what are the defects related to the thyroid hormone? So this also we had already seen. The hyperthyroidism and hypothyroidism. Excessive secretion and less defective secretion of T3 and T4 are hyper and hypothyroidism. Okay. Hyperthyroidism, in which T3 and T4 are increased and TSH is decreased. Hypothyroidism, in which T3 and T4 are decreased and TSH is increased. And we know we have already seen the different signs and symptoms in hyper and hypothyroidism. The diagnosis is by thyroid profile, which includes T3, T4, and TSH. Okay. In doubtful cases, FT3 and FT4 are also done for the diagnosis of hyper and hypothyroidism. This FT3 and FT4 are nothing but free T3 and free T4, which are not bound to any proteins. Okay. And next, coming to the third aspect of utilization of the tyrosine, the synthesis of catecholamines, which are nothing but neurotransmitters. So these are dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine, or adrenaline or noradrenaline. So these are the neurotransmitters, catecholamines, which are synthesized from tyrosine. So this also we had already seen, phenylalanine converted to tyrosine, which is converted to DOPA, and DOPA gives the neurotransmitters, the catecholamines, dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine. Okay. So this is the formation of catecholamines from tyrosine. And these are the enzymes required for the formation of catecholamine. These all we had already seen. Then what are the defects, disorders related to the formation of catecholamines from tyrosine? Parkinson's disease. So this is seen in elderly people. The defect is decreased production of dopamine. So this is due to degeneration of brain, particularly at substantia nigra and locus coeruleus. This is the Parkinson's disease. So the symptoms of the Parkinson's disease are tremor, slowness of movement, that is also known as bradykinesia, and stiffness of arms and legs. Okay, these are the symptoms of Parkinson's disease, which is related to the synthesis of catecholamine from tyrosine. So the diagnosis is by neurological examination, physical examination, and review of signs and symptoms. And it can be combined with the other investigations like radiological investigations, the CT scan and MRI. But the main baseline of diagnosis depends on the neurological physical examination and depending on the signs and symptoms. And coming to the treatment, here the defect is dopamine synthesis. But dopamine can't be given the treatment because it cannot cross blood-brain barrier. And DOPA cannot be given. DOPA is useful in the synthesis of dopamine, but DOPA cannot be given because it leads to synthesis of dopamine in other tissues also. So what is done is dopamine analogs are given. Okay, carbidopa and methyl-dopa. They will cross the blood-brain barrier and they won't be accumulating in the other tissues. And they will decrease the effects of the Parkinson's disease. Disorders of tryptophan metabolism. So by this we have completed disorders of phenylalanine tyrosine metabolism, which is very important. In the initial degradation of phenylalanine tyrosine, we had seen the phenylketonuria, alkaptonuria, tyrosinemia type 1 and type 2. And in the utilization of the tyrosine for the formation of melanin, we had seen hypo and hyperpigmentation. In hypopigmentation, we had seen vitiligo and albinism. And in for synthesis of thyroid hormones, we had seen the hyperthyroidism and hypothyroidism. And in the synthesis of catecholamines from the tyrosine, we had seen Parkinson's disease. So all those are the disorders of the tyrosine and phenylalanine metabolism. So now we are seeing the disorders of tryptophan metabolism. So these all we had already seen in the metabolism. The tryptophan metabolism, there are two pathways, kynurenine pathway and serotonin pathway. In the kynurenine pathway, the first intermediate form is a kynurenine from tryptophan, and it is useful in the synthesis of NAD plus and NADP plus. And coming to serotonin pathway, it is helpful in the synthesis of the neurotransmitter serotonin from the tryptophan. Okay. So this you had already seen, this is the kynurenine pathway in which the NAD plus is formed. And this is serotonin pathway in which the neurotransmitter serotonin, which is also known as hydroxytryptamine, is formed from tryptophan. So these are the pathways. So what are the disorders? Hartnupp's disease. This is hereditary disorder of tryptophan metabolism. This is due to impaired absorption or transport of tryptophan from intestine or renal tubules. So the symptoms of Hartnupp's disease are dermatitis, mental retardation, ataxia, and pellagra-like symptoms due to impairment of NAD plus synthesis. So this is a picture of the disease, Hartnupp's disease, in which you can see the pellagra-like symptoms. Okay? You can see the dryness, dermatitis. And coming to the diagnosis, high levels of neutral amino acids in urine, increased indole estrate and indole pyruvate in urine can come from the diagnosis of Hartnupp's disease. And treatment is daily supplementation with nicotinic acid and nicotinamide. And coming to the disorders of cysteine metabolism, cystinuria. It is one of the common inherited disorders. So the carrier system in the kidney tubules for reabsorption of amino acids is defective. So this leads to increased excretion of cysteine, and apart from cysteine, lysine and arginine also excreted in the urine. So here what happens is, after the utilization of amino acids in different metabolism of proteins, some amino acids will be excreted in the urine. So these amino acids are again will get reabsorbed for reutilization in the body. If there is any defect in the carrier system for the reabsorption of the amino acids, the amino acid will be excreted in the urine without reabsorption. Due to defective reabsorption, more amount of amino acids will be excreted. Okay? So similarly, in the case of cystinuria, the cysteine will be excreted in the urine, and this leads to formation of cystine stones in the kidney. Okay? That is cystinuria. And diagnosis of cystinuria is by cyanide nitroprusside test, and treatment is dietary restriction of cysteine and high intake of fluids. So when the dietary restriction of cysteine is done, the accumulation of the cysteine in the kidneys will decrease, which lowers the risk of formation of the cysteine stones in the kidney. And high intake of fluid leads to elimination of cysteine stones which are already formed in the kidneys. And the next disorder is cystinosis or cysteine storage disease. The cysteine crystals are deposited in tissues and organs of reticuloendothelial system, which contains spleen, lymph nodes, liver, and kidney. So this cystinosis is due to defect in lysosomal function. So when there is defect in the lysosomal function, the cysteine accumulates in the lysosomes of various tissues. Okay? When the lysosome is not functioning properly, if the lysosome is functioning properly, even though the cysteine is enters, it will be eliminated. If the lysosomal function is defect, the cysteine will get accumulated in the lysosomes and in turn accumulates in different cells and the tissues. Okay? So this is cystinosis. Coming to the diagnosis, increased cysteine levels in the WBC, which is a part of reticuloendothelial system. And coming to treatment, oral fluids and mineral supplements are the treatment for cystinosis. Coming to the disorders of methionine metabolism. So we know methionine is a precursor for the synthesis of cysteine and cystine, and the defect leads to homocysteine accumulation. The methionine defect leads to the defect in the methionine metabolism leads to accumulation of the homocysteine. So here you can see methionine is useful in the synthesis of cysteine and cysteine. So the homocysteine is the intermediate product formed in between the formation of cysteine from methionine. So if there is any defect in the enzyme, then like cystathionine beta synthase, it leads to defective formation of cysteine and increased homocysteine. So homocysteine will get accumulated in the body. This is very important because the accumulation of homocysteine is having ill effects to the body. So homocystinuria, this is due to defect in cystathionine synthase. So here cystathionine synthase. So it leads to accumulation of homocysteine. When the homocysteine is accumulated, it leads to mental retardation by affecting the brain, and thrombosis and osteoporosis by embolism, pulmonary embolism, and it leads to atherosclerosis, damage to the endothelial cells leading to the myocardial infarction. So there are many severe side effects due to accumulation of the homocysteine. So that's why the defect of methionine metabolism is very important, which leads to accumulation of homocysteine. And this homocysteine is having severe ill effects in the body. So the diagnosis of homocystinuria is by genetic testing and liver biopsy, and treatment is dietary intake of low methionine and high cysteine. Because we know due to defect in the enzyme, homocysteine is getting accumulated from the methionine. So that's why methionine should be lowered so that the formation of homocysteine is lower. And high cysteine should be taken because cysteine is not being formed properly. So that's why high cysteine to be taken and low methionine to be taken in the diet. And vitamin B supplements will be helpful in this condition. Homocysteine and heart attack. Homocysteine is very important because it leads to MI heart attack. That's why in homocysteine is estimated for assessing the cardiovascular damage because it leads to MI. So when homocysteine accumulates, its level will be increased in the blood. It reacts with the collagen in the blood vessel wall, and it produces reactive free radicals, which leads to aggregation of LDL particles. So the main defect due to homocysteine accumulation is it produces reactive free radicals and leads to accumulation of LDL particles, and this causes the atherosclerotic changes, atherogenesis, leads to heart attack. So these are the things, and this is the picture showing the production of the free radicals and aggregation of LDL particles, which leads to atherogenesis, finally lead to heart attack. This aggregation of LDL particles finally leading to heart attack. So this is about the effects of the methionine metabolism. Here in the methionine and cysteine metabolism, the important thing is homocysteine. That is the central intermediate product which is leading to the severe ill effects in the body. And coming to the disorders of branched chain amino acid metabolism, we know valine, leucine and isoleucine are the branched chain amino acids. So we had already seen this metabolism. Valine, leucine and isoleucine are converted to their respective keto acids by enzyme transaminase, and the keto acids are converted to unsaturated acyl-CoA thioesters by dehydrogenase complex to their respective thioesters. And finally, they will be forming different thioesters. Okay, these are we have already seen. The main thing you have to remember is this enzyme is very important, alpha keto acid dehydrogenase. So if there is any defect in this enzyme, that leads to the maple syrup syndrome or maple syrup urine disease. This is a metabolic disorder of branched chain amino acids, and the enzyme defect is alpha keto acid dehydrogenase. So when there is defect in the alpha keto dehydrogenase, the alpha keto acids can't be converted to acyl-CoA thioester, and keto acids will be accumulating in the blood. Okay? So branched amino acids and alpha keto acids are elevated in the plasma and excreted in the urine. This is known as branched chain ketonuria. So when the keto acids are accumulated, automatically the branched chain amino acids will also get accumulated, and when the substance levels is increased in the blood, then it will be excreted in the urine. So diagnosis, estimation of branched chain amino acids and keto acids in the urine. And the treatment is dietary intake of low branched chain amino acids. Okay? So this is the defect of branched chain amino acid. Maple syrup urine disease or maple syrup syndrome. Here the main defect is in the enzyme alpha keto acid dehydrogenases. Okay? And the other results are intermittent branched chain ketonuria, which occurs due to alpha keto acid dehydrogenase, and isovaleric acidemia, which occurs due to the enzyme defect isovaleric CoA dehydrogenase. And coming to the metabolism of histidine and arginine, the defects are a little bit rare, So the important clinical aspect here is the histidine is converted to figlu and figlu is converted to glutamate. So this is the metabolism of histidine. But here the important clinical aspect which is required for us is the conversion of figlu from figlu to glutamate is the last step in the metabolism of histidine. So for this step, the folic acid is required. So to estimate the deficiency of folic acid, this histidine metabolism is utilized. So histidine is given to the patient. If folic acid levels are normal, then glutamate will be formed. If folic acid levels are not in sufficient quantity, then figlu can't be converted to glutamate and figlu is excreted in the urine. We'll estimate the figlu levels in the urine. So in this way, the folic acid level is estimated by figlu excretion test. So for this, histidine metabolism is utilized. So this is the importance of histidine metabolism. Apart from this, the direct effect of histidine is histidinemia. This is due to the enzyme defect histidase. Coming to arginine, it is an intermediate product of urea cycle. We know it liberates urea and ornithine. The defect of the arginine is hyperarginemia, and the enzyme defect is arginase. Okay, this is the direct defect of the arginine. So the other clinical importance of arginine metabolism is the arginine is substrate for synthesis of nitric oxide. The enzyme required is nitric oxide synthase. And there are different functions of nitric oxide in the body. Okay, angina pectoris treatment and vasodilation is smooth muscle relaxant. It regulates blood pressure. It's a neurotransmitter. It's inhibitor of platelet aggregation and adhesion. So all these are the functions of nitric oxide, which is synthesized from arginine. So this is the important clinical aspect of arginine. So with this we have completed the disorders of different amino acid metabolisms, okay, which come under protein metabolism. And coming to hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is also protein which we had seen in the protein metabolism. Okay? So in this there is synthesis of heme and degradation of heme, the important aspect. So coming to the synthesis of heme, we know the important precursors for synthesis of heme are the succinyl-CoA and glycine. Okay? And the final product is heme, and the different intermediates are formed. So these intermediates are known as porphyrins due to presence of porphyrin ring. And these are the enzymes which are necessary for the formation of heme from the succinyl-CoA and glycine. So what are the disorders related to heme metabolism? So the defect can occur in any enzyme which are necessary for the synthesis of heme. So the enzyme defect leads to accumulation of different type of intermediates which are nothing but porphyrins. So that's why the defects are known as porphyrias. So these porphyrias can be erythropoietic or hepatic depending upon the site. Okay, whether it can be liver cells or RBC. So these all we have seen different type of porphyrias which are broadly classified by hepatic and erythropoietic depending upon the site, and these are different types of hepatic porphyrias and these are erythropoietic porphyrias, and these are the enzyme defects. So the any enzyme defect can lead to accumulation of different type of porphyrins, which finally leads to porphyrias. So these are the clinical features or symptoms. So the common symptoms of porphyrias are abdominal pain, vomiting, neuropsychiatric symptoms, photosensitivity, and increased hemolysis. Okay, these are the symptoms of porphyrias. So these are the pictures of porphyrias. Here you can see the skin changes. This is also a picture of porphyria. Here you can see the wolf-like skin changes. So this is the urine sample of a porphyria patient. So here you can see it is a little bit red in color due to presence of porphyrins. Because all the intermediates for the synthesis of heme will be having porphyrin ring. So that's why the urine is, as the porphyrins are accumulated in the blood, they are excreted in the urine. So that's why the urine is a little bit red in color or brown in color. Heme degradation. So heme degradation, we know heme is converted to bilirubin and bilirubin, and this bilirubin is conjugated in the liver and excreted in the intestines and kidney. It is all we know. It is conjugated in the liver and excreted in the through intestine and kidneys in feces and urine. And the defects related to the bilirubin are jaundice. Okay, pre-hepatic jaundice, hepatic jaundice, and post-hepatic or obstructive jaundice. These all we have seen in detail in previous sessions. So biochemical parameters for diagnosis of jaundice are total bilirubin, direct bilirubin, AST or SGOT, ALT or SCPT, ALP, urine bile salts, bile pigments, and urobilin. These are nothing but liver function tests. As the jaundice is a disease related to liver, these are liver function tests. These tests are used for the diagnosis and differentiation of different type of jaundice. And these are the urine findings in different types of jaundice. Here the main thing that you have to remember is urobilinogen is increased in the pre-hepatic or hemolytic jaundice, and bile salts and bile pigments are seen in the hepatic and post-hepatic or obstructive jaundice. The more bile salts and bile pigments are seen in the post-hepatic or obstructive jaundice. So we had seen the disorders associated with the synthesis and degradation of the heme. The synthesis of heme, the disorders are porphyrias, and in the degradation of the heme, the disorders is jaundice, which includes prehepatic, hepatic, and obstructive jaundice. So with this, we have completed all the disorders which are related to the protein metabolism. So all are important questions for examination point of view, and even in the clinical point of view, all the disorders are important in the future. So all of you read well and remember. Okay. So thank you and all the best.